Hi there. My name's Aaron Smith,
And I'm Catherine Lyons.
and we are the chief editors of the Virginia Journal of Medicine. And today we're going to talk about how to write a case report.
So, Aaron, what is a case report? A case report is an excellent way for a medical student to begin participating in research, especially if this is your first research project. It is a short, focused report that reviews a clinical case presenting with unusual findings or a rare disease presentation. Typically, the attending or resident provides the patient's information, and then the student performs a chart review, followed by a literature review on the disease process and the reasons why the case is atypical. And yes, chart review is Latin for you're about to spend some quality time with your EMR and a very large coffee.
Well, look at this. I was not expecting a Latin lesson. So, now that we know what a case report is, what makes it publishable and worth reading? A case report becomes valuable when it presents a rare or new disease, a unique manifestation of a known condition, or a newly observed mechanism of disease progression. It may also offer insight into novel treatments or highlight adverse or beneficial side effects of medications. These reports are beneficial for continuing medical education and really do contribute to the broader medical literature.
Having discussed the purpose and definition of a case report, let's review its structure. Most follow a standard format consisting of an abstract, introduction, case description, discussion, and conclusion. The exact structure often depends on the journal's requirements, so it is essential to consult the instructions for authors of that particular journal's website before starting. The introduction usually includes definitions of the terms used and the background of the disease being discussed. The case section outlines the patient's clinical course based on a chart review. The discussion covers the literature review, comparing the current case to what has been published previously. And this section should identify whether the manifestation is novel or if the disease itself is new, and reference related conditions or treatments as needed. The conclusion should address why the case matters and how it could affect clinical practice or future research. Many journals also allow or require supporting tables, figures, or illustrations, which could include clinical images, literature summaries, or lab results, depending on what effectively supports the case, Aaron.
So, Catherine, it is also helpful to briefly discuss case series, which are structurally similar to case reports but include multiple patients. These are organized using the same general format: abstract, introduction, case description, discussion, and conclusion. Rather than detailing a single patient, however, typically each case is labeled and summarized sequentially. Sometimes, instead of a descriptive text, cases are presented together in a summary table to streamline the information.
Another format worth mentioning is the photo quiz. When a case is not novel enough for a full write up but still holds educational value, it may be submitted to a journal as a photo quiz. This format, Aaron, includes an image that displays the novel disease manifestation or unusual presentation, followed by a brief case history and a multiple choice question. The discussion section provides the answer and explanation, often referencing literature and explaining why the incorrect options are less likely. This format works well for cases that are educational but not highly novel.
Also, some journals do not have dedicated sections for case reports or case series, but may allow these to be published as letters to the editor or brief commentaries. These formats typically begin with, quote, "Dear Editor," and are often presented as a single continuous piece without section headers. This approach always varies by journal, and it is important to consult the specific formatting guidelines. In general, the overall structure remains similar, but the presentation may differ.
Let's begin talking about writing a case report. The first step in writing a case report is selecting the case. As a student, you are often not in clinic long enough to identify these cases independently, so they are usually pointed out by a resident or attending. If you are a clerkship student, You might be present when an interesting case appears, but the supervising physicians will still typically identify it for you since you are not yet the content expert as a medical student. Once a case has been selected, ask the team what makes it novel and why it is worth reporting. Then begin investigating the disease through reputable sources such as PubMed, Ovid, or UpToDate. During your chart review, focus on the assessment and plan, as they are often revealing of the reasoning behind the diagnosis and treatment. Clinical notes may even reference relevant literature, and the patient's subjective portion and physical exam findings can also provide important context. Before writing, you should choose a target journal. This step is important because it influences both your style and formatting. Each journal has different instructions for authors, including required sections and word limits. Some journals require an abstract, introduction, and discussion, while others may not require a conclusion or may structure things differently. You should search via Google or another search tool the journal name and then, quote-unquote, instructions for authors, and that will usually lead to a helpful webpage outlining the necessary guidelines. Understanding your target audience is essential. A case interesting to one subspecialty might be routine in another, so consider which journal you might publish in and who will benefit from reading your report. It is also important to understand the difference between open access and non-open access journals. Open access journals provide free public access to articles, but often charge article processing fees for publication. These fees can be expensive, so always confirm with your attending or team whether they are willing to cover the cost. Be cautious of journals that charge a fee but lack peer review, as they may publish any submission regardless of quality. Peer-reviewed journals provide credibility through expert feedback. Index journals, such as those listed in PubMed or Medline, are often more reputable and do not usually charge publication fees. Their scientific quality tends to be higher, and they are reviewed by experts in the field. Consider checking the journal's impact factor, which reflects its scientific influence. Higher impact factor journals, such as Nature or JAMA, are more credible and more widely read. When selecting a journal, check whether it is peer-reviewed, its open access status, whether it charges article processing charges, and whether its author and figure limits are applicable for you. Also, you can ask your team if they have a preferred journal, Erin, as many attendings already have one in mind when they come up with this idea for a case report. Often, case reports are submitted to the most competitive journal first, and if rejected, are then submitted to journals with lower impact factors. Over time, as you gain experience, you will become familiar with the appropriate journals for your field. Now remember, submitting to journals is a bit like dating. Aim high, expect rejection, and keep trying until you find a good match.
See, look at these tips we give you here only at the Virginia Journal of Medicine. So, Catherine, the next step I want us to focus on is deciding which format is most appropriate for your case. As we discussed, we have the standard case report, case series, photo quiz, or letter to the editor. This choice will depend on the nature of the case and the journal's format. It should really be a decision with your entire team. Once the format is chosen, let's begin writing. Please keep in mind, though, these are flexible guidelines. Think of these as tools, not rules, to help you structure your process. Some people prefer starting with a literature review, while others begin by writing the case summary. Either method is acceptable. Personally, between Catherine and I, we recommend beginning with the case section, as this helps clarify what makes the report novel and really can guide the rest of your writing process. Start by gathering all the information you might need, even details that seem minor. Create a separate document where you can organize all clinical facts before starting to write. In systems like Epic that our hospital system uses, useful tabs include clinical notes, media for images, and results for labs and pathology. These sources should provide most necessary clinical details. The case report is the meat of your report. Present the clinical information in chronological order, focusing on the current condition, not the patient's complete medical history. Include relevant physical exam findings, key lab results, differential diagnoses, the final diagnosis, treatment, as well as follow up. This section really should read like a story, guiding the reader through the clinical reasoning and showing how the diagnosis was reached. Although you already know the outcome, write it as though the case is unfolding for the first time, making the reasoning process transparent, understandable, and most importantly, readable. This is narrative writing. This is really some classic liberal arts college writing we're doing over here. Keep in mind, even Anton Chekhov and Michael Crichton were doctors before they became authors.
That's a wonderful tip, Aaron, and really brings your undergraduate degree into practice here. Let's talk now about the literature review. So after outlining the patient's clinical course, you can begin your literature review. You may have already done some preliminary research before reviewing the chart, but the most useful search occurs after understanding the specific details of the case. This allows you to compare what happened with what is considered typical. Look for whether this presentation has been documented before and what the standard manifestations of the disease are. You can use tools like Ovid Medline, PubMed, and Open Evidence. Next, you can begin drafting your introduction. This section provides background context, defines important terms, and explains why the reader should be interested in the case. It gives enough information to understand the case report without being exhaustive. The final sentence of the introduction should introduce the case you are presenting, Aaron.
Okay, we're closing in now. Now we're going to write the discussion and conclusion. This is the section where you justify why the case is interesting and novel. We're going to summarize key findings, briefly review related literature, and clearly explain how the case contributes to the larger new knowledge or insight. Address the value of the case, the lessons learned, and any limitations. This is not meant to be a comprehensive literature review, and of course, unless the journal requests one. Conclude with evidence-based statements or clinical takeaways. If the case summary is the meat of the paper, then the discussion and conclusion is that classic Gordon Ramsay garnish that tops off your beef Wellington. And once the report is fully written, you have the abstract remaining. This is the victory lap of your edited and ready to submit case report. This should be concise and summarize the report's purpose without excessive detail. Keep in mind, most abstracts range from 100 to 250 words and rarely include citations.
Now that the report is written, let's focus on the title. It should be clear, concise, and informative. Avoid phrases like case report or first report, Aaron, as these are implied. Focus on what is novel and relevant. Once the title is finalized, we can complete the remaining submission requirements. Journals often request keywords, references, tables, and figures. Choose specific, relevant terms for your keywords that reflect the subspecialty and focus of your case. Avoid acronyms and be as clear as possible to help others find your report. References should be to primary literature whenever possible. If you found information in a review article, trace it back to the original source. Reference limits vary by journal, so check guidelines beforehand. Think of references as sources for further reading, not citations for every detail. You should use reference management tools like Zotero, my favorite, or Mendeley, Aaron's favorite, to stay organized. Tables and figures should be in the correct format with appropriate legends for your specific journal. Ensure that they support your argument and do not include irrelevant content. If needed, include supplemental materials for completeness, although this is uncommon in short reports like case reports. You should also plan to acknowledge contributors who helped but are not quite authors. Finally, you should ensure that you have obtained informed consent from the patient, especially if images of them are included. Some journals require specific consent forms, so check the submission requirements early.
So these are some case reports that Catherine and I have worked on and believe provide good examples of the various types you may write. But please don't limit yourself to these. Spend some time reading various reports, especially those from journals you're hoping to submit to. We have some additional sources for further reading on how to write case reports and really general navigation on the publication process. So thank you for sticking with us through this video.
We hope you found this useful as you embark on future projects.
And consider submitting to the Virginia Journal of Medicine.
Always. Also, please reach out if you have questions or would like another topic addressed, or if you're just a really big fan of our jokes and Aaron's metaphors.
And as always, have an absolutely beautiful day. Thank you.